So are we all familiar with this movement in some capacity? Have we seen it? Yeah. Okay. So the idea is pulling ourselves up to the bar and then pulling our body up and around. I'm going to try to demonstrate it. It might not be the prettiest pullover you've ever seen. It's going to look something like this. So biggest key pieces here is that our body needs to stay in a hollow tucked position and our arms need to stay close throughout the movement. So we're going to try to teach those important pieces through a couple of different steps. So we can actually start by grabbing a PVC and giving this to athletes. And we'll go through what this kind of feels like on the ground. Thanks. So first thing we can do is have athletes lay on the ground. You guys can watch me first, then I'll take you through it. They'll start with the PVC up overhead, and then they'll pull it down to below their chin, and then from here, tuck their knees in up to their chest. So you guys can try it. Lie down on the ground. Cue them to squeeze their bellies, squeeze their legs together, and then you're going to pull the PVC down under the chin, then tuck the knees up, trying to pick the hips up off of the ground to the chest. That's the idea. So for brand new athletes, we can even keep them in this progression, working on trying to pull those hips higher off the ground, getting the feeling of staying in that deep tuck. So that would be kind of step number one. From there, depending on where athletes are at capacity-wise, I would say that athletes who have 3 strict pull-ups, we can make attempts on the higher bar from the beginning, and athletes that are working towards those 3 strict pull-ups, we can either set up one of these lower bars here, or we can set up a barbell against the rig with bands. So let's just look at like where that setup needs to be. And then we'll go through a couple of progressions. So for that low bar setup, we want it set so that when the athlete's arms are bent, their chin is over the bar. So it's really like right at the top of their chest, chin set up here. And then for other athletes, they need the capacity for a strict pull-up. So I would say step number 1 is going to be for athletes to either do 3 strict pull-ups, or they can do 3 really challenging ring rows. This would be a good, thank you. This would be a good place for you to also test athletes' capacity, because you're going to ask them to do a couple of strict pull-ups. Then you'll be able to see whether they can get their chin over the bar. So biggest piece when you're assessing that strict pull-up is, can they reach this range of motion? Because that's where we need to be before we initiate that pull around. All right, so from there, after they have done that, what you'll have them do, let's see, what did I say I was going to do next? I gotta look at my phone. Thank you. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that's right. All right, so then once we're there, what we're going to have them do is either on a higher bar or on a low bar setup, we're going to hold a 3-second pause at the top. And we're going to go through a couple of reps of that. So if somebody's working on capacity for a strict pull-up, you're going to have them do a toe-assisted pull-up, 1, 2, 3, and come down. Same idea applies at the high bar. You're going to cue them to jump, 1, 2, 3, and then come down. Again, you're assessing the ability for them to be able to hold their body weight in that position, which needs to happen before we initiate that turn. As far as like logistics and setup, I would say especially for the first couple of times you're teaching it, depending on the size of the class, set up no more than 3 stations. So maybe 2 stations on a high bar or 2 stations on a low bar, depending on the athletes, and then have them go through in groups. Other big piece, I'll back up for a second, as soon as we get to the next progression, is that we want athletes to be spotting each other. So when we're going through these progressions, we'll take turns after I demonstrate, and then we'll take turns spotting each other so we can kind of feel what that's like as well. All right, so for the next one, we're going to do some just working on kick-up tucks. So for people who are developing capacity, they can set up a box, or I actually like this bench because it's really stable, and we can put our feet on here, and then the idea is that we're trying to, we'll start with our arms long, pull ourselves to the bar, then kick up. Now they can try this with one leg, or just see if they can generate a little momentum to bring those hips up to the bar. So it's just hip thigh taps. Same thing happens when you're up at the high bar here. We can either go for one leg if we're somewhere in that, in that development, pulling, then tapping, or potentially pulling, then trying to bring those hips up to the bar. So I'm going to actually let us give this a go. We'll take turns coming through these, and we can spot each other. So again, trying it a couple of times. Sometimes you may need to do that if you want to demonstrate. If you don't feel comfortable on the high bar, stay on the low bar when you're demonstrating it. But let's all try the low bar one first. Come on in here. Let's have Jen go first. Okay. All right. So she's going to set up with her arms straight, and then she's going to put her feet on the bench here. And now, biggest piece that you want to cue is that she wants to get that hollow position. Then she's going to pull herself to the bar as her feet are coming up. Yeah, so then come back down. Now try to make that one motion. You're pulling as you're getting that momentum. There we go. And we can use one foot. So I'm going to stay next to her in case she feels unstable. I'm going to have one hand kind of behind her back and one hand kind of here underneath her legs. And she completed her turnover. And so that's the other piece too for spotting. So if somebody gets stuck, that was actually a great example. You're just going to assist their body in the motion that it was continuing to go with control. So if she's down here upside down, I'm not going to have her flip back down. I'm going to help her continue her momentum to a safe position. Does that make sense? Yep. All right, let's give that a try. Rusty? Jen, you can take turns spotting Russ.
All right. It is that hollow. That's it. Pull. Good.
Good.
Down.
So then try a little bit more of momentum. So you're pulling and kicking at the same time. Good. It's hard to generate those hips up high from that position. Yep.
Kicking more.
And you guys are just completing the whole motion. So that would actually be, kind of coming up to the next step in the progression. But good job spotting. All right, Rusty, you can spot Mark. Get ready. That's it. That's it, Mark. Yeah. Yeah. Let one leg sort of lead the momentum, lead the charge up.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, and be there to spot him.
Going all the way over? All the way over.
Yeah. And so in this situation where this bar is set up, it would probably be more advantageous if you stood on that side of him just so that you don't have this in the way, but that was the right position to be in. If you guys want to take a try at the rig, you can put one foot here, and then we'll have one leg be the predominant leg that kicks up. So if I'm here, I'm pulling and trying to get my hip to tap, and it's going to be one leg that really generates that if you're using the box. And you're going to use a spotter, so somebody's going to stand next to her. And it's a pull and kick, hollow. And she's just going all the way over. Try just the progression that I was doing, though, before, where you're just bringing your hips up to tap.
Okay.
Yes, good. So you can have people working on these things at the same time. Once you've demonstrated it here, set up 2 or 3 lines, have athletes rotate through, and once you've shown them how to spot, have them continue spotting each other. And you may have somebody who's able to continue that momentum around. From there, we can go into trying to get our hips all the way up to the bar at the same time. And we can do this from the low bar or the high bar. So from here, you're going to come down straight, bend, whoop, I went all the way around. Bend and try to pull. So that may be the natural reaction of what happens, and if so, that's great. Again, you're going to cue them to stay tucked and hollow, trying to pull their hips up to the bar. So we're going to generate momentum from the ground, pull, and tap. I clearly can't do that without rotating myself all the way around. Same thing, yep.
One thing timing-wise to look at for this team is if you watched Marcia's timing of when her knee stayed in that tucked position and when she then extended the knee doesn't extend until the hips have connected with the bar.
Right.
So you want to think like if one cue, because I've just been watching some of you
Yep.
guys do it, and we're getting stuck when the knee extends in front of the bar versus behind it. So think about, hey, you're not going to try to extend your leg until your hips have connected with the bar and you're on the back half of the bar, if that makes sense.
Yes. And actually adding on to what Joe's saying, keeping tucked, think about, or you can cue them to have their eyes looking at their legs until they've rotated around. Then you can cue them to extend. That's going to be even more crucial once they're up there on the high bar. So there's a couple of different ways that you can go about getting athletes to do the full rotation on the low bar. One of them is that trying to bring those hips up to tap and then seeing if they can continue the momentum over. Again, cue a hollow position, cue chin tucked, cue looking at the legs, and waiting to extend. The other would be sort of a step in. So this, I would give this to an athlete who potentially has a little bit more capacity. So somebody who is not quite getting it on this, but they have the strict pull-ups and have pretty good body awareness, they can kind of do a step into kick up and over. There's a little bit more momentum, so it's important to have a spotter with this one, so somebody can come over here and spot me. Buddy. All right, so what you're going to do here is you're going to have them step in with one foot. The dominant foot is going to tuck, lead up and over. The other foot's going to follow. So as you're stepping in, you're pulling and tucking as you're coming up and over. But there's a little bit more momentum to it. You're starting behind the bar. So you can see there's a little bit more speed. There's a little bit more momentum. Again, you would want to give that to somebody who maybe has a little bit more body awareness, but really making sure that spotter is there in case they let go of the bar or get stuck. And from there, it's attempts on the high bar. So cueing them to pull to their chest, tuck the knees up, look at the knees, and then up and over. I think it would probably be valuable for you guys to try both that kick step and then take a couple of attempts at the high bar.
The high bar,
Yeah.
is it from a still, or can you jump into it?
Good question. Yeah, so I guess somebody who's close to but is not quite able to go from that strict pull-up to up and over could try jumping into it. A harder skill is going to be starting from a hang position, pulling yourself chin up, then coming up and over. That's going to demand a lot more strict strength. So,
As with anything, Russ, I think I would say in terms of safety, number one, go from the strict. You know what I mean? It's an easy thing for people to bite off more than they can chew on that. So I think just exactly what Marcia said, go strict first. I think if it's down here on a lower bar, a little bit more and someone's spotting, we have a little bit more margin for error, but it's going to be very challenging to spot somebody moving at a higher elevation at a much
faster pace.
They're going to be way faster.
Right.
You know, doing that, so the risk for over rotation and falling is a lot higher.
Yeah.
So I would say try to stay away from that. Even though it is called the college boy roll, the Marines did it in the Marines, like cool, but let's not
running and jumping into it.
Not running and jumping.
If you needed to give yourself a little help from your feet from below
Yes.
to get into that
Yes.
pull position, I think that would be
I
fine.
think that's
But you
appropriate,
wouldn't want to run
if
and
we're
jump
gonna
into it.
run and jump, I think
Yeah.
that one step is more than enough.
Yes.
On the low, spotted.
Yeah.
One step spotted on the low bar, totally fine.
Yep.
So they can get the feeling,
But they're going to get a lot of bang for their buck trying to go up into that strict pull-up and tucking their hips up. And that's where the meat of this movement is. That's where the gymnastic strength is you need to be able to pull up, stay tucked, and then bring your hips to the bar. So why don't we go through, and we'll have you guys go through the progressions. So we just did the hips up to the bar here. I'm going to have you guys try the hips to the bar, at least Mark and Russ, without the bench. And then we can go from using the bench here from the high bar, and then we can make attempts at the full movement.